Hey guys, HardlyBriefDan here with another episode. This is episode 37 of our Unity Making RPG series, and today we're going to be doing terrain. And just like I said last time that we do terrain. So hopefully you guys have been looking forward to this. I'm going to try to go in depth as I can. I'm going to give you guys a few tips. One, as you see on the screen here, I'm going to create a new project. Setup, and I did that by going to file and then hitting create new, or hitting new. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I find it easier for first timers and for myself and stuff to work on terrain in a brand new only terrain project. So before I go into some of my tips with terrain, we're going to go ahead and do this. So create a new project. We're only going to be using this to test. So I created a terrain test project folder in my Unity games on my G drive. And I'm going to go ahead and include a few things. We're going to include a skybox, terrain assets, and we'll do, let's see, tree creator. We'll do water basic. If you have pro, you can use water pro. And I think that's all I want. I'm going to grab a character controller just because. And I think that would be good. I'm going to go ahead and hit create. We're on 3D mode, so I'm going to go ahead and create. It's going to close down this. It's going to open up a new Unity, which is what we want. And it's going to it's going to import all these packages. This is going to allow us to work with some basic textures and stuff. Nothing too crazy. Okay, so here we are. We're in our new project. Here under standard assets, this is everything we just imported. And what we want to do is in our scene view. This is where we're going to be working mostly today. So I'm going to try to make it as big as possible, like that. We can even hide this game view, put it up here, hide animator view. So you have one giant scene. Okay. This is what I like to do. Now, terrains act as game objects, and you can actually create a terrain in this test terrain or terrain test. Terrain test project and actually export it and put it into your other game that you're working on. So in this case, we could create terrain. If you love it, you can export it and put it in, and then import it and put it into the Unity RPG project that we've been working on for the past couple months. So what you want to do to create a terrain is go ahead and go to, I believe it's game object, create other, and it should be terrain, and it is. So game object, create other, and terrain. As you see in our hierarchy, we have a terrain, and down in our project you see a new terrain object. Now, this terrain is massive. Look how big this is. I just want to, this is huge. This is a 2000 by 2000 terrain, and the way you know that is in the inspector. You can go ahead and hit terrain. I'm actually going to expand this a little bit so we can make sure we can see everything. So do this. Yeah. So this is our terrain settings, and you can see our terrain width and length is 2000 by 2000. Now I suggest, and what I'm going to do for this video is bring it down to 100 by 100. And you're like, wow, that's a really tiny terrain. Well, oh, it didn't set. You might be wondering why. Well, mainly because the 2000 by 2000 terrain is huge, and it's hard to work on when it's that large. Especially when you're new at building terrains, and I'm not the greatest at it. Now, I want to give you some tips. One, start off with small terrains. You don't want to get too big. Two, if you're in your main project, you want to have a smaller terrain, because if you have an extremely large terrain, it's going to try to render the entire thing basically when you're running your game. So unless you have a killer computer, it's going to bog it down, especially when you go into adding trees and grass and stuff. And what we can do in the future is work on a script where it loads terrains. Maybe like you see these square grids right here. We have this middle square, but then we have these outer edges. Maybe we can work on a script later. I'll have to look into it, that loads these terrain pieces that are actually connected, but they're separate. But loads them when you're in the area, so you're not loading everything all at once. Maybe you've noticed in past people that create terrains or games, you see their frame rate just lagging tremendously, and that's mainly because the terrain's too large for what it needs to be. or they're just trying to load too much all at one time while the game is running. The other thing I'm going to do is change the height to about 100. Terrain height doesn't need to be too large. 600 can be pretty big. But we're going to jump right in and start doing some design. So I went to this terrain button up here. There's 7 buttons up here. Settings. This is like for this one right here is for grass. This one's for trees. This one's for painting. We're going to be painting our textures on here. This is to increase and decrease land. This is, you can level it out here. You can flatten it, smoothing, and then painting. So we're going to be raising and lowering terrain right now. And brush size. As you can see, we have this small blue circle. And if I increase the brush size to like 95, you see that the circle's gotten bigger. Or 100, it's bigger. You can change. Opacity is basically the strength of what it's going to be doing. So if you have 100% opacity, it's pretty hard to see. Let me get a hard circle. 100% opacity is going to be the strongest. Now if I drop it down to 6, I'll do the same thing, and you see you can barely see it. So basically you could think of opacity as strength. Control Z to get rid of these. Up here are our brushes. This is what the terrain will look like. I'm going to go ahead and turn up opacity to 100 so you can see. This is our blue circle. That's what that brush creates. You can look around. So depending on the type of terrain you want, these will all do different things. You know, just play around with it. You get really jagged. You can go ahead and get a circle and make it and smooth out, make it more hilly looking, more natural. But you can also download brushes or create your own. Maybe a star. So just play around. I'm gonna go ahead and Control Z all this because I don't want any of this for this tutorial. But that's how you do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and click a soft brush, and this is what it looks like. Creates little mountains. I'm gonna turn down the opacity probably to about 50, and we're gonna start creating some terrain. Now, like I said before, I'm not the best at this. Terrain is an art. It takes practice. Lots and lots of practice. So if you want this beautiful, magnificent terrain, maybe you're good at it. Maybe you're an artist and this comes easy to you, but to me it doesn't come that easy. So it takes me a while to get something I like. But like I said, I'm on the first brush. We're in the raise and lower terrain. On brush size 100 and our opacity is at 50. And this is just going to let me kind of like model some terrain out. I'm going to go ahead and kind of lift up this one edge here and kind of just build it up almost like a mountain. You know, just kind of work on it. Take your time. I'm just holding down the mouse button and dragging. Say you don't like a spot, like this little mound up here, I can hold shift and I'll lower it. So here we have like a rolling hills look type coming up. Looks pretty good. So this current creates hills, and like I said, play around with the brushes. Gonna get used to it. Another thing you can do, this is kind of fun. You can go over here to our paint height, and let's say we don't like any of this, or we want to raise the height. You can hit this flatten button, and it flattens it out. And as you see, it kind of raised it, and this allows you to create valleys and stuff without raising terrain around it. So let me go back. If I set this flatten to 0, I'm going to hit flatten. It's going to push it all the way down. See, we're flat, we're at 0 mark. If I go to raise and lower terrain height, I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to try to lower it. See, I can raise it. You set opacity up high so you can see it. I'm raising terrain, but when I hold shift, I can't lower it unless I go back over it, right? So what you can do is go to this paint height, set this like to 10, let's say, and hit flatten. It's going to raise the general terrain 10 units. So when I go back to paint, raise, and lower height, I can raise stuff still, but when I hit shift to lower it, I can actually lower it. You can see where it's capping out at 10. So let's see, like this, I just created like a little river or a valley. It's pretty steep. It's not pretty, but you get the idea. So I'm going to go ahead and actually keep it at 10 with our paint height. You can, same here, we have our brush size and opacity. I'm going to go ahead and back to our raise and lower, and I'm going to start working on a very simple lazy river with some mountains in the background, and this is what we're going to work on with our painting. So I'm going to go ahead and do these little hills like I was doing before. I always tend to start off in a corner, kind of raise it up. This kind of creates a boundary for the player, which you might not want, but I'm going to go ahead and do the because we're not creating a script in this video, I'm going to keep this pretty simple. Trains can get complicated stitching them together, and that can definitely get challenging, and I actually don't know how to do it 100% yet. So, but here you go. We have some mountains. I forgot to change the opacity down, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and create a little valley here, or a little river, I guess. Here we go. So it's pretty deep. It's like I said, it's not that pretty, and it's all gray. Not the best looking thing, but practice makes perfect, you know? So here we have a little scene. I'm going to go ahead and raise some of this up. It's a little deep. There we go. We have some mountains, some hills, and I'm going to go ahead and put some more just around here, because the world's not perfectly flat, you know. There's always little mountains everywhere, little hills, little bumps, and that's what I just did here. It's hard to see. Hopefully you can see it on the recording, but this is, looking at this, it's pretty dull. It's just gray and white. It's not pretty, but basically this imitates a height map, which you can import height maps. I can do in a later video to create the terrain for you. But anyways, we're going to jump in, and we're actually going to do some smoothing first. So in smoothing, let's say if you create a very jagged shape, I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and select this star. I'm going to set the opacity up pretty strong so you can see it. So here we go. We have a star in our terrain. And, you know, I don't know if you want that or not, but if you do, it's okay. But sometimes Unity struggles with doing lighting. Lighting in 3D Engine is based on the vectors basically that are like pushing out. And if you have super sharp jagged lines, the engine struggles to I guess piece those vertices together to make a smooth lighting effect. So you can use smooth height. I'm going to drop the brush size and opacity down a lot. You can use smooth height to kind of smooth things out. So as you see here, it's smoothing it. It's kind of creating a more non-jagged edge. It makes it look maybe like a little more natural, or maybe like erosions occurred. And it will smooth out the lighting effects as well when you do this. Keep in mind when you're doing terrains, if you're trying to go for a natural look, and maybe you're not, but if you are, if things are sharp, it looks more man-made than if things are smooth, right? So if you have straight lines, it's going to look very human-made, versus if you didn't. So here you can see that I've smoothed this out. It looks a little better, looks a little more natural. And I mean, star doesn't look natural, but it looks a little more natural than it was. Alright, so now we're going to jump in and start doing some terrain painting. So here I'm in the 4th tab up here. It's terrain paint, and you can go ahead and add a few textures. And the reason why I imported some assets is so that we have textures. Unity comes with textures, free textures to use. So here you have two options: a normal map, which we're not using, but we're going to be using a texture. So hit select, and here is what we have to use. We have several different textures in here. We have grass, rock, dirt is somewhere. You can probably search for it. Dirt, good dirt. This is what comes with Unity. Now, real quick, the first texture that you add to this painting is going to be the base texture. It's going to go over the entire scene. So I'm going to go ahead and click good dirt. I double clicked it. I'm going to hit add, and as you see, it loaded over my entire scene. Now it's something better than just gray and white nonsense. We actually have some texture in here. You can zoom in, you can look at it, it's all pretty. But look, our entire map shouldn't be just dirt. It should look different with grass and cliffs. So we're going to go ahead and add a few more textures. I'm going to go ahead and type grass. You see we have grass hill. I'm going to double click and hit add. Going to do, let's see, add texture. I think there's a rock, cliff. We'll do grass and rock, add, and then we'll go ahead and add cliff, add textures. If you have your own textures, you can just drag and drop in here, and you should be able to find them. I'm going to double click and add, and now we have 4 textures to work with. We have cliff, dirt and grass, grass for a hill, and then just dirt. Now comes the fun part, maybe tedious part. Maybe you should listen to music while you do this. But we're going to be painting, and you're going to be using the same brush size, opacity, and now we have this new thing called target strength. Now the way target strength and opacity works is target strength is as strong as that texture is going to come out, and opacity is going to be basically the percent of what that target strength, of what it can reach of the target strength. So it's like 22% of our target strength of 1 is how strong when I paint will be. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click grass just so that we can see it. I'm going to increase our brush size so you can kind of see what I'm painting. You see it's pretty strong. But if you go ahead and lower the target strength, let's say down to 25.25, it's not going to be as strong. It's coming a lot more subtle. You see that? It's bare. You might not even be able to see it. I'll increase it a little bit. It's going to try its best to kind of color it, but it's very, very subtle. It looks. It's going to take a lot of fine tuning to paint what you want, but in the long run, if you take your time, you can really make some beautiful terrain pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and Control Z, get rid of all this, and I'm going to start out with, I guess, cliffs. So on these really sharp parts, I'm going to put some cliffs in. These mountains, I'm going to get rid of some of, I'll probably come back over it just to smooth it out, but I want to get some cliffs in here. I'm going to actually up the strength because I want it to be pretty visible that this is a cliff. I'm going to go ahead and grab this grass dirt. I'm going to zoom in down here and kind of see it's pretty subtle, and you could just go ahead and play with the strength what you like and kind of play around with it. Play with the brushes, just kind of tease it. It's pretty hard. Remember, Control Z is your friend, so if you do something you don't like, you can always press Control Z to erase it. But as you see, you know, I'm slowly doing this, and we're getting a terrain built. It's starting to look a little better. You can see that there's a couple different textures in here. You can zoom in. Go ahead and create the target strength up a little bit. I'm going to drop the brush because we're getting close to the river, and I think near a river it's going to be a little more rich, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do the little line here. You can see it up here. I'm going to go ahead and click the grass. We're going to drop the target strength down a lot, and we're just going to slowly blend some grass in. And I'm just messing around. I don't really know. I'm not, like I said, I'm not an artist. And terrain takes a lot of time, but just playing around with it. I mean, it doesn't look half bad. Well, you might think it looks ugly, but I don't think it looks that bad. Gonna go ahead and grab this dirt. It's pretty dark. Let's see. We want. There we go. That's what we want. See. Just kind of creating this river edge. And see, here's one of these lighting effects that I was trying to explain earlier. Basically, the engine is struggling to render right here. It doesn't know what to draw because of how sharp it is. I didn't smooth it, so it sees this and it's like, well, I can't draw on that well, which is okay. It doesn't look it's pretty sharp, so like, you know, if this is a final product, you definitely want to work on it. But let's say this is our terrain for now. Doesn't look too terrible. We have some mixed textures in there. Let's jump in and do some other things. We have the tree creator here, which I haven't done too much. You can find trees. Let's see. Here we have a big tree. I'll go ahead and click add. Alright, so what I did here is I hit edit trees, and I added one of the trees that come in our standard assets with Unity in our tree creator. It's a big tree. I'm not gonna. You can choose to mass place trees, which we'll do. Here you go. You can see how big this brush is. Because we're on such a tiny map, it added a ton of trees. So I made the brush size down to about, let's say about 4. So it's a lot tinier. It's probably only going to place 1 tree. Control Z to get rid of it. But as you see, you can play the density. So let's see, well, 100% density, it's going to try to add more. So you add tons of trees. You probably don't want to do that. Color variation, you can add a variation to the color. So let's say 75. You can't really see it here, but some of the colors, the darker greens. Tree height variation, you can have different heights. I'm going to drop that down. Oh, tree height, here we go. Say tree height can go up to 156. We'll set the variation pretty high so all the trees are different sizes. It just tries to, basically Tree Creator tries to place trees and varies them, make it a little easier for you so you don't have to manually place trees everywhere. But you can do that as well. So now I'm going to actually drop density down. We're going to place 1 tree at a time. I'm going to drop the tree height down to about 89, make it a little smaller. I'm only going to place a few because what's going on? I think my computer is frozen. Maybe. I'm trying to place some trees and it's failing on me right now. Control Z is not working either. Oh, there we go. Alright, well I fixed it. I don't know what was going on, but seems to be working fine now. Very odd. But here we go. We got some trees. I'm going to just do a big patch like that. Let's do it like that. So I added some trees. Don't go too crazy with trees, mainly because they can really bog down your computer. What you want to do with trees, and what we'll do in grass here in a second, is kind of place them strategically. You know, there's some spots that you definitely want trees, and you should place them where you want them, but be strategic about it. You know, if a player is going to be in a specific spot that you want more detailed, then definitely take the time to put those trees there and edit them and make them look correct. But if you're just randomly placing trees everywhere, you're going to be using a whole bunch of computer resources that you don't necessarily need to use at all. You know? And I know these trees don't look good right now, but you should definitely play around with these settings. Go in and see what you can do. The next thing we're going to add is some details, and these are objects that are 2D objects that will move around and look 3D like grass and stuff. So I'm going to go to Edit Details. I'm going to add grass texture. These 2 colors here are let me add a grass real quick. Let's see. We'll get this grass. So basically these are 2 colors that the grass will vary in between, and I'm going to go ahead and add them with the default just to show you, and then we're going to go ahead and adjust some of it. So I have the same brush, we have the same opacity, target strength, and brush size, and when you click, it's going to actually add grass. It's going to add these blades of grass that stick up from the ground. So you see, it's very, very dense right now. I'm going to go ahead and drop the target strength and opacity down just so we can get a couple. Let's see, we'll do this so we can kind of zoom in and see. So hopefully you guys can see this online. You can see these blades of grass. And this is one thing you want to also be careful with. Blades of grass can cause a lot of problems for your computer. If I turn up the strength and I turn up opacity and I just made tons and tons of grass, it might look cool in the game, you know, but it's gonna really drop your frame rate, which you don't want. So like this, you know, it might look good when you're playing the game, but it's gonna destroy your computer. It's gonna really bog it down. You want to have grass, you want to add these features, but you want to be careful how you add them. Now I'm gonna go ahead and change these details. We want to edit this grass because it's really bright. If we're lime green, we're going to have fake looking grass. So we want to kind of darken it. And this is going to be all up to your style. Maybe you want blue grass. Maybe you want, I don't know, a red grass. You can add red tint to it if you want. This is going to require you to play around with it because depending on the style of your game, the art style, this is going to change how you want. your grass to look. But I'm going to go ahead and click apply. We're going to leave it how it's like that. I'm going to go ahead and delete some of this grass. Actually reset those settings, which is okay. But I want to drop the opacity and strength down again because I'm going to add a few blades here and there. Kind of just around trees. Again, I'm not an artist, so bear with me. You can definitely get some brushes and add them. I know this, sometimes grabbing these bigger brushes and just setting the brush size to be pretty big, going around and placing them randomly, and then hold shift to delete some. Actually, go ahead and it's going to delete some of the grass to make it look more random. This works for me sometimes. Again, doing this definitely takes a lot of work, but you can kind of see the terrain there. The next thing we're going to add is a character controller, just so that we can walk around this world. I'm going to go ahead and grab this first person controller. Going to drag and drop it into the scene. It's in the ground, so I'm going to go lift it up a little bit. I need to add a direction light, and if you have Pro, you're going to have shadows, dynamic shadows, like constantly changing, but I don't have Pro. I'm going to go ahead and add a direction light. I'm going to go ahead and lift it up. I'm going to rotate it. How do we want it? I guess we'll do it like that. Kind of like overcast. I think I'm going to rotate it a little bit. So it's like nighttime. I don't know, that'll be good for now. We're gonna jump into game view. I'm gonna go ahead and press play, and just to show you around using this controller, we can kind of look at our scene. So here we go. You can kind of get an idea of what the scene will look like, or how it plays. You see this grass? This is the grass we just added, and this is the wind. This is a bend factor that's just built into the terrain. You can adjust. All this is adjustable. You can adjust the bend factor, but it basically adds some realism to the grass. It adds like a little sway to it. The trees do it as well. But this is good just to run around. You can kind of get an idea how big things are, how well they go together, how steep your terrain is. Maybe, from afar you can't tell how steep this terrain is, but it's pretty steep in some spots, It's not the best. It looks like I'm stuck. Alright, we got out of it. But I'm running around. We're not bogging down the computer. You can look at the stats. Let's see, we're running at basically 60 frames per second, so we're doing pretty fine. We're not having any frame drops, which is good. Look at this tree. It's not even in the ground, so you'd have to manually adjust that tree. It doesn't even look good. Same with this one. So that's another spot, that tree editor doesn't work well. You'd be running around the game and you can look underneath this tree. You don't want that. But it's good for a kind of general layout. But anyways, this is basic terrain. It's not the prettiest. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, lots and lots of practice. That's why I said start with the small terrain, build up to it, get used to the settings, get used to the brushes, get used to the opacity, all that stuff. You wanna really take your time to learn what all these things do. The next thing and the last thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and add some water. I'm gonna add water basic. We have two things. We have daylight simple water and nighttime simple water. If you have Pro, your water's going to look entirely different. The free version water isn't that pretty. Looks pretty bad in my opinion. But I'm going to go ahead and add it. This is just a giant circle here. This is the color it's going to look like. There's not much texture to it at all. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to adjust some of it though. I'm going to elongate it. We're going to rotate it. This is like the best way to kind of move stuff around. We're going to put it under the train. There we go. Now, see, let's see. So that works, I guess, for now. Maybe I'll make it a little longer. Yeah, just to... I'm going to try to get it looking... There we go. There we go. We added a simple river. Again, the free version of Unity's water is pretty pretty darn ugly. But hey, if it's like, you can probably find some free water textures, and that's what I definitely suggest to add, because this simple water is just, oh, it's bad. And you don't get any reflections on it. You don't get, like, it's not the best. But I'm going to go ahead and press play. You can see that there's water in the game. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but actually, I'm going to, maybe if we change around the tiling. Does that do anything? Let's see if we can, no, it didn't. Okay. Anyways, I don't know if you guys know this, but water in 3D engines is not a 3D object. So if you want to simulate swimming and stuff, you're actually it's gonna be a lot more work than you might think. And here's a prime example. Here I've added water, and in water it just acts as a plane. Basically, it's a textured plane. And you can go right under it. You don't see it. There's no underneath of it, you know. So you might be asking, well, how do you create swimming? How do you create flowing water? Well, flowing water and swimming all comes down to shaders and textures, and basically you're tricking the eye. You're not actually creating a 3D gushing water. You got to create that idea of it. So let's say you're running around and you jump in the water like that, you know, you can't tell you're in water. It looks like I'm in a valley. You can't even see that there's water here, which is okay. But to simulate that, you need to actually add like a shader to the camera, a script that basically tells the camera that you're in the water and you need to just be displaying some sort of atmosphere. And that is a whole nother video in itself. I don't even know how to do shader coding that well, if at all, but I just wanted to get some water in here. Again, if you have Unity Pro, it's going to look a lot better. But this is a super basic terrain. We got some water in there, we got some trees, we got some grass, mountains, we got some texture painting. Hopefully this is enough to get you guys started. Maybe if I work on a terrain myself, I can show you a more detailed one. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here, though. Please like, subscribe, comment. Maybe post some response videos of the trains that you guys build. It'd be great to see kind of what you guys are able to do and what you're able to accomplish. But anyways, I hope you liked the video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.